Prologue: The Bone and the Flame. The hall of divination was silent except for the crackle of fire. Rows of ox, scapulae, and turtle shells lay in neat order, polished smooth, carved with thin lines. The priest, Zhen, sat cross-legged before the brazier, his eyes fixed on the bone he held. He heated a bronze rod until it glowed red. With steady hands, he pressed it to the carved pit. The bone hissed, then cracked, splintering into jagged lines. Zhen leaned closer, reading the fractures like a man listening for the heartbeat of the earth. Rain will fall tomorrow. The harvest will be spared. The king's court exhaled in relief. But Zhen's eyes lingered on one fracture at the edge, a curve like a claw, reaching hungry. A whisper brushed his ear, colder than the wind. Not spared, taken. Zhen's hand trembled. The flame guttered. No one else seemed to hear it. Only him. Chapter 1: The Capital of Yin. The Shang capital pulsed with life. Bronze bells rang from the temple towers, drums beat for the king's procession, and smoke rose in curling tendrils from sacrificial altars. Zhen walked through the market square, the weight of his divining bones heavy in the pouch at his waist. He was young for a priest, barely 30 summers, yet already entrusted with the sacred art of oracle bone divination, the bridge between mortals and ancestors. The people bowed as he passed, whispering, "There walks the voice of the spirits. He reads the will of heaven itself." But Zhen kept his head low. For nights now, his dreams were haunted. He saw shadows moving between the cracks of the world, slipping into houses, trailing whispers like smoke. And when dawn came, someone in the city would be gone. Their body intact, their eyes open, but their soul emptied. Chapter 2: First Omen. At dusk, the king summoned Zhen to divine the cause of the vanishings. The royal hall glowed with bronze lamps, their light reflecting off the polished faces of ancestral masks. The king sat upon his throne, his voice like iron. "3 of my people lie hollow, their spirits devoured. The priests say heaven is silent. You will ask the bones." Zhen bowed low, heart pounding. He placed a turtle shell on the brazier, carved with the question, "Which spirit steals the souls of men?" The rod pressed, the shell cracked, lines spread like rivers of black across its surface. Zhen read them, and felt the air grow heavy, thick with a presence not of this world. A voice coiled in his skull, sibilant and mocking. "You seek me? Then look into the dark between the cracks. I am already inside you." Zhen gasped, dropping the shell. For a moment, he swore he saw something move in the fracture. A face, eyeless, leering. The king's eyes narrowed. What did the ancestors say? Zhen forced breath into his lungs. His lips were dry. They warn of a soul thief demon. A murmur of fear swept through the court. The king's gaze hardened. "Then find it, or it will feed until nothing remains." Chapter 3: The First Encounter. That night, Zhen returned to the hall of divination. Alone, the brazier's light flickered against the rows of bones. He laid another scapula upon the fire. How do we stop the soul thief? The crack came sharp, violent. The fracture spread in unnatural patterns, spiraling into a shape that made Zhen's stomach twist. A mouth, open, endless. The air grew colder. From the shadows beyond the brazier, something stirred. It was not flesh, not smoke, not even shadow, but a thing in between. A shifting figure that rippled like oil. Its mouth stretched too wide, lined with teeth of bone. "You hear me?" it rasped. "You alone. That makes you mine." Zhen stumbled back, clutching his pouch of bones. His voice broke. "You are bound. The ancestors forbid your kind." The demon laughed, the sound like cracking bones. "Bound? Fool. The cracks you carve are doors. Every question you ask lets me through." The brazier flared, shadows writhing like serpents along the walls. Zhen snatched a carved talisman from his belt and thrust it forward. The symbol glowed faintly, holding the creature at bay. The demon hissed, retreating into the fracture lines upon the bone. The hall fell silent. Only the smell of burnt marrow lingered. Zhen collapsed to his knees, trembling. He had seen it, touched it, And it had spoken true. Every divination risked opening another door. Chapter 4: The Hollow Ones. The capital whispered with fear. Every morning, another body was found. Not slain, not torn, but emptied. The faces of the victims were pale masks, their eyes staring but unseeing, their lips frozen in silent screams. The people called them the Hollow Ones. Zhen examined one in the temple courtyard. He held a bronze mirror above the corpse's face. In the mirror's reflection, the body flickered faintly, as though a shadow still clung to it, writhing like smoke before vanishing. The attendants recoiled. "Priest, what curse is this?" Zhen's jaw tightened. "It is not a curse. It is a hunger. The soul thief feeds." That night, he wrote the names of the dead onto polished bones, carved with his own hand. He heated them in the fire, seeking answers. The cracks spread, jagged and sharp. This time there was no whisper, no mocking laughter, only silence. The silence of a mouth too full to speak. Chapter 5: In the Court of Shadows. The king grew restless. "You promised answers," he thundered in the ancestral hall. The carved masks of forefathers glared down from the walls, their bronze eyes gleaming. Zhen knelt, sweat slick on his brow. "I have seen the demon with my own eyes, my king. It slips between cracks. It feeds on the living, leaving husks behind. It is drawn to the questions we ask." The king's hand tightened on the hilt of his bronze sword. "Then stop asking. If the cracks are doors, close them." Zhen looked up sharply. "Without divination, we are blind. We would abandon the voices of the ancestors themselves." The king's eyes narrowed. "Better blind than hollow." At that, the brazier in the hall flared, though no one touched it. The masks upon the wall rattled, as if something laughed behind them. The courtiers froze. The king's face hardened. "Find it, or you, too, will be offered to the fire." Chapter 6: The Trail of Smoke. Zhen returned to the streets, desperate for a path forward. He carried jade charms, mirrors, and his pouch of bones. His eyes scanned every shadow, every doorway. In the alleys of the city, he began to see it. A smear of black smoke where none should be. It slipped into cracks between walls, crawled across rooftops, seeped under doors. He followed one trail to a house where wails rose. Inside lay a family of 4, the mother and father clinging to their children, their eyes wide and empty, their souls gone. The smoke coiled toward him, shaping into the grinning mouth he knew. "You chase me, little priest? You carry the very keys that feed me." Zhen raised his jade talisman. The smoke hissed, retreating, but the children's hollow faces would not leave his mind. Each time he blinked, he saw their emptiness. That night, when he lay to rest, he dreamed of the demon standing at the foot of his mat, its voice dripping like oil. "Every name you carve, every crack you burn, you open me wider. You are not my hunter, priest. You are my priest." Chapter 7: Bones of Fire. Zhen awoke screaming, sweat soaking his robes. He stumbled to the brazier, clutching the bones. "No more questions," he whispered to himself. "No more doors." And yet his hands trembled, carving another name. His heart burned with the need to know. He pressed the hot rod to the bone. A crack split it, and blood dripped out, though no wound was there. The marrow inside had turned red. The demon's laughter filled the chamber, loud, echoing. The brazier flared with black flame. Zhen threw a fistful of jade charms into the fire, chanting prayers until the shadows recoiled. The room fell silent again. The blood vanished, but when he looked at the cracked bone, the fracture spelled a word in the old script. His own name. Chapter 8: The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. From that night onward, Zhen was never alone. He felt the demon in every flicker of torchlight, in every shadow at the edge of sight. His own reflection began to betray him. In the bronze mirror, his eyes flickered black, his mouth stretched too wide. He avoided sleep, for in dreams the demon grew bold, whispering, coaxing, mocking. "You are already mine. When you divine, I feed. When you resist, I wait. There is no bone that does not crack." The city grew restless. The king demanded answers. The people whispered that Zhen himself was cursed. Some called him a savior, others a doorway to doom. And Zhen knew the truth. The line between hunter and prey was breaking. Chapter 9, The Last Consultation. Zhen sat alone in the Hall of Divination. The brazier glowed low, its smoke curling like restless spirits. Before him lay one last turtle shell, untouched, its surface polished smooth. He whispered, "Ancestors, if I must fight, show me how." The rod heated red. He pressed it down. The shell cracked, but instead of lines spreading outward, the fissures formed a spiral, pulling inward, deeper and deeper, until Zhen swore the crack became a hole. From within, the demon's voice spilled, dripping like poison. "So eager to be consumed. Step through. Offer yourself. Your soul will make me whole." But this time, Zhen did not tremble. He carved his own name into the shell, pressed the rod again, and shouted into the fracture, "I will not be your door. I will be your prison." The crack flared with white light. The shadows in the hall shrieked, writhing against the walls. Chapter 10, The Demon Revealed. The ground shook. From the fissures in the walls, from the carved lines of the bones, from the smoke of the brazier, the soul thief demon erupted. It was vast now, no longer a smear of shadow but a towering form of smoke and bone. Its mouth a gaping maw of teeth stolen from the hollow ones. Its body shifting like 1,000 writhing souls bound together. Courtiers and guards rushed in, only to collapse as their souls were ripped from their bodies with a whisper. They fell hollow, their lifeless eyes watching as the demon swelled larger. Zhen stood alone, talismans burning in his fists. "You will not take this city," he shouted. "You will not feed again." The demon's laughter rattled the rafters. "You cannot fight hunger. Hunger is eternal." Zhen's eyes burned with fire. "Then I will starve you." Chapter 11, The Battle of Shadows and Bone. The brazier roared, flames leaping as Zhen cast jade charms into the fire. Symbols of power flared across the floor, glowing circles that bound the demon's limbs like chains. The monster thrashed, shrieking, clawing at the runes. Every time it struck, the walls of the hall cracked, dust raining from the beams. Zhen pressed heated rods to bone after bone, each crack exploding into light. He shouted the names of the hollow ones, one by one, etching their memory into the fire. With each name, the demon screamed, staggering. The souls it had stolen tore free, streaks of light rushing out of its smoky body, vanishing into the night sky. The demon roared, "No, they are mine. They were never yours," Zhen answered, pressing another rod to bone. The crack split, a blazing fracture of white. "You fed on them, but you never kept them." The creature lunged, its maw snapping inches from Zhen's face. The heat of its breath was like a furnace of rot. Shadows writhed around him, clawing at his chest. He drove the bone into its mouth. It shattered, releasing a burst of flame and light that seared through the demon's skull. The soul thief shrieked, collapsing, its smoky body tearing apart. Chapter 12, The Price. The hall burned with unnatural fire. The demon dissolved into fragments of smoke, clawing at the air, retreating into the cracks of the shattered bones. But the light did not fade. It spread into Zhen's chest, scorching him from within. He gasped, falling to his knees, his body convulsing. He understood. The prison he had promised was not the bones, not the fire, but himself. The demon's voice hissed inside him, faint but still alive. "You bind me, but you bind yourself too. You will never be free." Zhen clenched his teeth, forcing breath through agony. "Better me alone than all of them." And with one final cry, he slammed his hand upon the brazier. The flames swallowed him whole. Chapter 13, Silence. When the smoke cleared, the hall was empty. The bones lay cracked and scattered, their inscriptions charred. The hollow ones who had lain lifeless on the floor now stirred, their eyes filling once more with light, their souls restored. But of Zhen, the priest, there was no trace. Only a single scorched turtle shell remained, its fracture frozen in the shape of a spiral. The king entered, sword drawn, and saw what was left. He bowed his head. "He has bound it," he whispered. "May his name be carved in bronze and never forgotten." Chapter 14, The Aftermath. The capital woke to silence. No screams, no wails, no whispers of souls devoured. For the first time in moons, the streets were calm. The people gathered at the temple, where the brazier still smoldered. They saw the charred bones, the circle of cracked shells, and the single turtle carapace etched with the spiral. "Where is the priest?" they asked. The king spoke with a voice like thunder. "He has gone where no man may follow. He gave himself to the fire, binding the hunger that plagued us." The crowd bowed their heads, grief heavy, yet in that grief burned reverence. The hollow ones, once empty husks, now blinked and breathed again, weeping with restored voices. They clung to one another, whispering Zhen's name. Chapter 15, The Spiral Shell. The king ordered the spiral shell to be enshrined. In the ancestral hall, beside the bronze drums and oracle bones, it was set in gold, its blackened fracture gleaming under torchlight. Priests came to study it, but none dared press a hot rod to its surface. The spiral seemed to draw the eye inward, as if it still held something bound. At night, when the lamps flickered low, some swore they heard a whisper in the hall. "I am hunger. I wait. I am bound, but not gone." Yet just as often, they heard another voice, calm and unyielding. "As long as I endure, it will not." The two voices tangled, like fire and smoke. Chapter 16, Legacy of the Bones. In the years that followed, the Shang kings continued their divinations. Bones were carved, cracked, red. But the priests worked with new caution, whispering Zhen's name before each ritual, laying jade charms upon the pits before they burned. The people said his spirit lingered, guarding the threshold between the cracks. Generations later, diviners still told his story, of the priest who listened too closely, who glimpsed what lay beyond, and who gave himself to protect the living from the hunger that would never cease. And every time a bone split under flame, and the lines spread outward like veins, the diviners shivered, for sometimes, in the silence between the cracks, they thought they heard laughter. Moral of the story. The story of Zhen teaches that knowledge is a double-edged blade. To seek answers is noble, but each question risks opening a door one cannot close. True strength is not only in asking, but in sacrificing for the answer's sake. Evil, like hunger, can never be destroyed, only resisted, contained, endured. And sometimes the cost of that endurance is borne by one who stands alone. Author's note: this tale is a blend of myth and invention. The Shang Dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE, is historically famous for oracle bones, inscribed turtle shells and ox scapulae heated until they cracked, used to divine the will of ancestors and heaven. The soul thief demon is fictional, inspired by Chinese folklore of hungry ghosts and shadow spirits that consume the living. The priest Zhen is also fictional, created to give voice to the tension between knowledge, faith, and the unseen dangers of divination. The goal of this story is not to recount history word for word, but to weave an epic, mystical journey through the atmosphere of ancient China, showing how legend and reality blur into a single truth, that every answer has a cost, and every crack may hide a shadow.